Over the past few months, flying regulations have gotten so bad that it's become almost impossible for me to fly. So I started thinking about making something different than my usual freestyle edits. And that was when I realized that there are barely any videos out there about advanced flying techniques. So I guess it's time to fix that. Flying clean is probably one of the hardest skills to master, and that is why it's one of the most noticeable differences between a decent pilot and a really good one. The funny thing is that tricks themselves are usually considered the hardest part, but in reality they really aren't. Doing a complex movement is fairly easy, but doing it without correction, at the right time, and smoothly linking into your flight lines is much harder. And this is what we're going to focus on today. Because while practice and experience are the main factors behind smooth and connected freestyle, I think that there are a few little secrets and exercises that can definitely give you an advantage, so let's see some of them. Now, before talking about flying directly, I wanted to give you a few tips about your radio setup, because I feel like there are many misconceptions about it. First, no, you don't need an expensive controller to fly great. Actually, I flew a long time with the X9 Lite, which is a really entry-level radio, and I did some of my best combos with it, reason why it's still one of my favorite radios I ever tried. Now, clearly, CNC gimbals and a good quality sensor are amazing to have, but they are definitely not as important as the shape and comfort of your radio, which is totally personal preference. That being said, you can still change two things about your controller, and this will make a very big difference, so let's go look at them. The first one is the height of your stick. Now, you might think that a taller stick end is better, as it makes the end-to-end travel bigger, giving you more resolution and allowing you to be more precise during corrections. Well, not really. The point is quite simple. If you do things right, you won't need to correct, and if you do a correction, your line and clip will be ruined, no matter how obvious it is. In fact, having more travel just means having more probability to make a mistake, as you will need to move your fingers more and you will spend more time trying to get to your desired stick position. This is why on all of my radios I ride my stick as low as I can, and it's also why I would not consider an issue buying a radio without full-size gimbals. The second thing you can change is your spring tensions. Weaker strengths are going to give you more agility, but if you go too far you might start getting issues, like cross-axis mistakes, inconsistency in stopping movements, and troubles locking the horizon. I personally prefer a medium weak tension, but the choice varies massively depending if you fly thumbs, if you pinch, and also on the strength of your muscles. A cool thing that you can do is actually mixing them. For example, if you fly mode 2 and you notice you make many unwanted inputs on your yaw axis while you add throttle, just add a bit more tension to the yaw while keeping the other one the same. Oh, by the way, if you run an HTX or OpenTX radio, just make sure that your ADC filter is disabled, because that one is very bad. Okay, now it's time for the flying tips. Now, 80% of your flying skill is probably just muscle memory, and this is why training it is super important and why a simulator can really develop your skills. Other than knowing the specific steps to do a trick, muscle memory is about knowing exactly your rotational rate at every point of your stick, even if you have your eyes closed. To improve at this, one very cool exercise that you can do both in real life and the simulator is the following. First, gain a little bit of altitude, and then close your eyes. Now try to do a very simple full stick roll, and once you've done it, reopen your eyes. Now, what I want you to focus on is the angle of your horizon. Ideally, if you have a perfect muscle memory and if your brain actually remembers your rate curve perfectly, it will be almost completely flat. Instead, if the horizon is all over the place, it means that while you fly, you will have to think and look very carefully at the movement you're doing. That makes it impossible to be confident and impossible to be in the flow state, which is exactly what you need to be a really great pilot. So in that case, I would practice this kind of blind maneuvers a lot, also on the other axes, and if you really want to take it to the next level, you can also do them at half deflection, a quarter of deflection, etc., so that your brain actually remembers every part of your stick inputs. The next advice that I wanna give you is how to turn a mistake into an amazing combo. So let's take a look at one of my last videos because I think that there is a great example of it. As you can see, I kinda eject towards this tree and I make a double roll. Now the idea was to make a rewind, but as I was doing the roll, I noticed that I was completely off the line and that I would have never been able to complete it correctly. Now I had three possibilities. The first one is to just crash. The second one is to brake with the throttle and ruin completely my line that was actually cool from the seconds before. And the third one is to avoid the tree in the coolest way possible, which is what you should always try when you can. So I decided to continue my roll completely, add a bit of yaw and add a lot of throttle so that I could gain just enough altitude to not crash inside the tree. And there you go. As you can see, it looks intentional, and you know, when you do this kind of last minute decisions, you tend to go very low to the grass or to the tree, like in this case, and it looks very cool. Clearly, being a last minute maneuver, you need to practice this when you don't expect it. So yeah, I just advise you to fly as hard as you can, make the most difficult lines and tricks you can, and if you happen to go in a bad situation, try to exit like this. You might crash and fail a lot of time doing this, especially in the beginning, and also if you don't have a very good muscle memory, reason why you should really practice it. But trust me that if you can execute it correctly, you will get some of your coolest clips ever. Now, the last thing you can exercise is to avoid overdriving, which just means flying your quad over its capabilities. The most common artifact from overdriving, especially if you do very fast freestyle, is bounce back, which happens when we do some very fast movements and we try to suddenly come to a stop. Clearly your P and D balance matter a lot for this, but trust me that many times the bounce back is actually induced by the pilot, that by centering the stick too fast just adds a bit of input on the opposite way. This is why when you release your stick, you should always add a bit of damping to them with your fingers, so that the spring doesn't pull them to the center way too fast. Keep in mind that doing this is much better than just adding more expo, because expo is always active. It's there if you start a move, if you move slowly, and in general when you don't need it. Instead, if you brake with your fingers, you will be able to control it when you want. So I really hope that this video was helpful for you guys. And clearly there are many other things that can give you an advantage in flying, like your tune, your ESC settings, your frame and everything like that, but I will cover all of this separately in other videos because yeah, it's a very broad topic and it would make this video just super long. Thanks a lot for watching, let me know in the comments if there are any specific topics that you would like me to cover, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.